So there's this really interesting question which I wanted to talk about because I thought it was so interesting. It said, "Do daughters of toxic mothers become toxic mothers too? Why?" Again, it said, "Do daughters of toxic mothers become toxic mothers too? Why?" So I wanted to just share some things off the top of my head on this topic. I haven't wrote down any notes, but I thought it was a really interesting question. And the first answer that I would say is absolutely no, they don't. Yesterday, funnily enough, and this is why I was triggered to talk about this conversation, I was having a conversation with a guy, and the guy asked me, "Do you think that if I was raised without a father, that I'm gonna be better off and be more successful than if I was raised without a father? Than if I was raised with a father? Like which one? Be raised with a father or be raised without a father? Which one will make help me become more successful?" And one of the things that I was explaining to him is that, in all honesty, who you're raised with is really irrelevant. Okay, and it's that old question of nature versus nurture. I think a huge part, of course, of life is indeed the nature. Okay, what you're born with, certain characteristics, certain traits. But a huge part of life that is also a contributing factor is the way in which you're raised. But one of the things that I said to him, and I said to him, this is in very rare circumstances, one of the things that I said to him, actually, let me go back. So firstly, I said to him that the majority of people, in order, it's going to work out better for them, as generally speaking, as human beings, as just having a head start, is going to work out better if you can be raised with a father, is what I would genuinely say. But I said to him that there are some people who are brought up without a father, and those people still end up becoming successful. Those people even go further because they didn't have a father. But I said to him, in a very small minority of people, there are some people who are indeed brought up without a father, who are brought up with a really bad nature. They were brought up with their family being alcoholics or being druggies or being involved in the criminal world. And those people, even though they had both disadvantages, both the nature and the nurture, they still went on to live incredible lives and become successful. The reason why I explained this to him was that actually what I ultimately believe makes a difference in people's lives isn't who raises you, or what characteristics you have, or the country you're raised in, or what advantages you have and do not have. Ultimately, I believe what actually makes a difference in people's lives is choice. Okay? And what I said to him was, I don't really think that it matters that much if you were brought up with a father or without a father. Ultimately, the question that you want to ask yourself is, are you prepared to do what you need to do in order to get to where you want to get to? Because I said to him, there are some people who are, because he was saying to me, he has stepbrothers who he's brought up with in the same house, same mum, and those same stepbrothers are in prison. They ended up getting involved in drugs. They ended up getting involved with stealing and stuff like that. And I said to him, but how can that possibly be that you're raised in the same household from the same parent, and yet one of you ends up, you're doing amazing in your career and they end up in prison? How is that possible? And I said to him, part of it, and a huge part of it, is choice. The choices that people want for themselves and the life that people want to live for themselves. There's going to be a lot of you guys who are listening to me. And the reality is, maybe you had a really bad relationship with your mum. Maybe you were brought up on a council estate. Maybe you were born disabled. But the reality, and we could use all of those excuses, and we can say all of those valid excuses, and they are valid. Okay, you are genuinely disabled. You are genuinely were brought up without a mother or father. We can always use those, but ultimately, what I've always said is, does it help you move forward? Does it help you win? Because what's the whole point of having everything and yet you don't use it? When I was talking to this guy yesterday, Daniel, I was saying to Daniel, there are some people who win the lottery and 2 years later they have nothing. And yet there are some people, in fact, I was actually using the example of Donald Trump. I said to Daniel, you may or may not like Donald Trump, right? This isn't a question of character, because the question you asked me was about success. And I said, ultimately, Daniel, you may not like Donald Trump or not, but you have to admit he's become successful. I think his father gave him something like £100,000 to start his business, and he took £100,000 and made an entire empire from £100,000 or dollars or whatever it was, right? And so the point being is a lot of people where if you gave them £100,000 and you came back 2 years later, they would have nothing. Right? They would not have built £1 billion global empire, amassing properties and amassing golf courses and all kinds, right? Just a lot of people wouldn't. And you've got to ask yourself, so why is it that Donald Trump managed to do that? Well, his father was well off, he came from a well-off family, he had everything. And I think part of it is that he decided that he wanted higher for himself. He decided that he wanted to even surpass his own father and reach his own version of greatness. And ultimately, what I would share with you is the same thing. When you ask the question, does as a woman who comes from a toxic mother end up a toxic mother? No. It's really up, no and yes. It's really up to you. Are you, if you come from toxic, dysfunctional dynamics, are you willing to go to counseling or therapy and do the work that is necessary so that you can become a conscious parent, so you can become present, so you can become attuned to your daughter or child? Or do you say, therapy is not for me, I don't give a shit, I'm fine? Ultimately, it's your choice. Nobody can force you to do it, right? There is no legislation or bill that says that you have to go to therapy. It's something that you have to do yourself. Just like there are some people who are brought up on council estates. Some of them say, I don't want to be here. And some of them say it's fine. But ultimately, it's their choice. They decided whether they want to or not. And so I guess for you, if you are thinking about that question, the question that I guess you're asking really the wrong question. The real question is, are you willing to do the work that is going to be required let me rephrase it. Are you going to be willing to do the work that is required to become a great parent? Because every parent is, of course, thinks that they're brilliant, they're amazing. But I'm talking about a great parent. I'm talking about your ideal parent. I'm talking about becoming the parent of your wildest dreams, who you've always wanted to become. Are you willing to do the work? Because if you are, then it becomes irrelevant, really, whether you came from a toxic relationship. Because either way, you've said, I'm going to take control and I'm going to make myself who I want to become. I was watching this film with, I can't remember the name of it, but it was based on Elton John. And in there was a line that said, sometimes you have to kill who you were born to be so that you can become who you want to be. If you wanted to, you could become and birth a new person in this lifetime. If you want to. That's your choice. But do you want to? Is ultimately the question. I hope that has helped you. Thank you very much for the question. I thought it was an amazing question. See you later.